What are just some of the different dimensions that God has illuminated or revealed to you about through the cross?
Well, let me try first, and I'll get. It has to be unchosen, I think, or it's not the cross.
What's that? Say that again.
The cross has to be unchosen. You can't deliberate how you're going to suffer. That's ego. When you steer the ship, that's why you got to mistrust all heroic sacrifice. Everything I'm doing for God and country, you're probably doing it for yourself. But you're disguising it behind God and country, you see, for the status that it gives you in this country. So chosen crosses are hardly ever crosses. The cross, as it did for Jesus, has to come uninvited, usually unexpected, undesired. And it's that conflict with, this isn't fair, this isn't right, why me? That why me question. That's the conflict of the cross. It's not really the suffering itself, it's the fighting of what seems like unnecessary, unjust suffering. That's what kills you. And I don't want to be naive about that. I know when it's come my way, we're talking about not days, but weeks and months, maybe years. I always pick the one of, if any of you have lost a child, they say when a parent loses one of their little children, they never get over it till the day they die. That it's just so wrong to bury one of your own little ones that you thought you were going to protect. So I don't want to be glib about that. But what was your last way of putting it about the cross? What'd you say,
What are some
Travis?
different dimensions?
Yeah. Well, I think I got right to the heart of it for me. It has to come uninvited. It has to feel unjust, wrong. Why me? That's precisely the character of the cross, the folly of the cross. And your mind will fight that for weeks, months, years. If it was a truly tragic death of your wife or a car accident, those kind of things that you just never get over, where it's over in a moment. There's no ability to process it. But I think that's why the crucifixion of Jesus had all of that tragic, unjust, unnecessary character to it. So there'd be no human encounter that we could say was outside of that realm. So what suffering teaches you is solidarity with other people's suffering. You once have to be in a place where it hurts a lot to hurt. Oh God, where you don't want to wake up, you don't want to open your eyes in the morning, where you don't want to, no, I don't want to go through another day. You have to know how much it hurts to hurt, to have empathy. They discovered that the word empathy was not in the English dictionary till 1909, little over 100 years ago. If the word empathy was not even in our language, you know what that means? The capacity to actually feel what that person is feeling. Instead of me sitting inside of my body, I can, for a moment, stand in your body. Now, if that word was not even in the English language till a century ago, I think we see how the cross was made into this mechanical atonement thing instead of an invitation into solidarity with human suffering. And that's how I read the cross. God's absolute identification with, solidarity with every human being who's ever been unjustly imprisoned, tortured, abused, killed, died on a battlefield all alone. That was God's union with that moment and with that person, and his promise of what he's going to do with it. So when we say as Christians that we're saved by the death and resurrection of Jesus, and that's common Christian language, I ask Christians, what does that mean? They hardly ever know what to say. They're not bad people, but it's just one of those cliches. The important thing, and I agree with the phrase, by the way, but the important word is not death, is not resurrection, it's and. We are saved by the death and resurrection. In other words, it's a saying yes to both of them. First the death, oh shit, and trusting even this will lead to resurrection. That's salvation. You're indestructible. Nothing can destroy you now. That is the salvation of the world. Christ has died, Christ has risen, Christ will rise again or come again. We have said that in mythic form, but I meet hardly any Christians, Catholic, Protestant, evangelical, charismatic, who know what that means. Because we push Jesus into this atonement thing, which was a juridical transaction. You don't fall in love with the juridical transaction, you know. Instead of, God is in immediate personal solidarity and union with what I'm suffering right now. That Jesus you'll fall in love with. That Jesus you'll give your life for. That Jesus you'll change your life for. And I think our human capacity to let God love us in that way and to love God back in that way is broadly emerging in the world now. As we've moved beyond a juridical understanding of the gospel to a participatory understanding of the gospel. My God, what's true of Jesus is true of everything. That would be my Christology in one sentence. What's true, what we say about Jesus, we are saying about everything. Jesus is the stand-in for everybody and everything. And that's what Paul means when he calls him the archetypal man, the new human. And why Jesus himself, in identifying with that, calls himself the human one. Which you know is a much better translation of that phrase that you and I grew up with, the Son of Man, right? That doesn't help. It doesn't help. What he's doing, he's going out of his way to say, I'm one of you. I'm a son of the human. I'm the everyman. I'm the everybody. Watch me and you're going to see how to do the human thing. And to do the human thing is to put it together with the divine thing. And I'm going to do it for you, and then I'm going to say, follow me. You know, why would anybody reject that religion? That's universal religion. It's not denominational religion anymore. Huh? I could preach that in the middle of India or China in a very neutral language, and people say I'm joining. You know, who wouldn't want to join that?
Us might unify.
Yeah, exactly. But again, it's nobody's fault. History was at the blue and red level till really the 17th century moved to the orange, and 20th century moved to the green. So we just couldn't see unitively. So these weren't bad people. I'm not saying they weren't going to heaven or Jesus didn't love them, of course. And I'm sure many of them were much more loving people than I am. So you can enjoy a level of consciousness by reason of the century you live in and the country you live in and the education you've had. So we have a 21st century American level of consciousness, maybe. But awakening is your inner state. And maybe this would be a good thing to draw it together on, right? You can have a high stage of evolution of awareness, education, if you will. But your inner state is how awake you are to the union of all things in God. So there were people who were at higher states who are more in love with God and neighbor in the 2nd century. But they were still anti-Semitic because they didn't understand racism yet, or they didn't understand the scapegoat mechanism. Now you and I, we have the best of both worlds and all the more responsibility. That we have a high stage of education and awareness that we can profit from the mistakes of 20 centuries of Christianity. But we have the possibility of an inner state at the same time. I hope that answers a lot of questions. In fact, I can bring it home by something that might shock you. If you're a preacher or you've studied the scriptures, we all know that gospel that we preachers hate to come up, where Jesus calls the Syrophoenician woman a dog. We say, oh my God, this is Jesus, our beloved Jesus. How could he be so cruel to call this poor little woman who's being as humble as she can be? Now, thank God he apologizes. Thank God he admits he's wrong and she's right. And a lot of men in patriarchal cultures never do that. He did. But what we have there is Jesus in a moment of hunger, irritation, tiredness, I don't know, reverting to his cultural stage of Jewish anti-Semitic thinking. Do you understand?
So he
catches himself on it, but he reveals it. And we've seen this in so many of our saints. Like St. Bernard was a mystic in the 12th century, but he preached against Muslims and Jews. And we say, how can he be a mystic, you know? Well, he reflected France in the 12th century, and he fell back into it. This has given me a way to understand so many faults in so many people, including St. Paul. St. Paul says a few stupid things, but I'm not about to throw it out, because he says so many magnificent things. Yeah? And I'm sure I'm saying a few stupid things. So only now and then does your stage of cultural, educational development match your inner state of union with God and neighbor. Do you understand? If you get this, it'll help you understand and forgive and love a whole lot of people. And you stop looking. You know, I watched that whole series on the Roosevelts. I don't know if you saw it. Ken Burns. Wow. I knew my parents practically worshiped the Roosevelts, but you know, I was born when he was president, FDR, so I never knew the exact details of it. Wow, I cried several times. I said, these people were larger than life. Now, we also found out they had some tragic flaws, didn't they? Eleanor had her tragic flaws, FDR had his, Teddy had his. Now, if you want to look at their flaw, you can, oh, he had a mistress, you know, he was a bad person. Well, I wish he wouldn't have had a mistress, but look what he did.
Talking about Merton's flaws last night.
And, Merton. Every great person has a tragic flaw. This is do you get this now, the connecting with the cross? Embracing that.
It's also part of that fly that like actually is
the fly in the eye. Yeah, it really is. Their struggle with that, their conflict of that, and I'm sure it's true in your lives, certainly is in mine. You're struggling with your own dark side, your own mistakes, your own shame about things you did wrong. That's what's going to bring you to God. No, isn't that brilliant of God?
Design, yeah.
It's brilliant.
I put the tree in the garden for
Yeah, exactly. Now everybody can get there. That the level of the playing field is level. It's absolutely level because we all do it wrong. And those who think they're doing it right, the hypocrite and the Pharisee, and the ultra-religious person is very often, sad to say, the last person who knows God. Because they don't need mercy, and God is mercy. They don't need love, and God is love. They don't need forgiveness, and God is forgiveness. That has to be the sin against the Holy Spirit, I'm sure. Well, I hope that helps.